Okay, let's work on the background, and I'm going to again just provide more contrast to her face by darkening the whole thing. I'm always making a decision whether I want to darken just specific local values or the general value over the whole entire area. And it is kind of a push and pull between those two elements, so you might trade off. One glaze you might do the entire area, that general value, and then on another layer you might do just the local value. Or you can also think of it as those nations and states, you know, the large shape and then the small shape. But in this case here, I think I will darken the whole thing. So let's take this large flat edge brush. We'll take a bit of ultramarine blue, raw sienna, mix it together in that same pile that we had from before because it'll work. Colors are pretty similar. And let's see here. We want just kind of a grayish tint. If it has a little bit of the alizarin crimson in it, I'm okay with that because my initial green got a little too intense, so I'd like to just tone it down a slight bit. So what we have is grayish greenish color. This is what it looks like on the white card. You can see that. So it's mostly just looks kind of grayish, but it has a bluish tint to it. And we're going to brush that over the whole thing. I'll start here in the lower left corner, cut up along the edge of her clothing, and just allow my brush to use quite a bit of pressure. And then I'm going to switch brush strokes and work against it perpendicular. Smooth that out. Keeping the wet edge, I'll brush it again this way with her clothing. Then we'll finish up with brush strokes going in the opposite direction. And that'll get a pretty smooth application, and now I can continue this, really scrubbing that glaze into the canvas weave. I'm using a lot of pressure. And I keep my brush very perpendicular to the canvas when I'm scrubbing it in, so to speak. Then I start smoothing it out, and the brush pressure gets much, much lighter. And I use some crisscross diagonal strokes to get a smooth application. Keep that wet edge. Now we're going to continue up, again scrubbing into the canvas weave, diagonal strokes. Flip the brush over to get the paint that's on the other side. And we'll just continue this up. Now we'll do a couple of strokes to smooth it out wherever it's needed. I don't do it unless I need to. But here I'm doing some brush strokes in a different direction. Some of the previous brush strokes were going this way. Now I'm having them go that way. Now here's a good stopping point because it's a very small distance from this area on the top of her head to the canvas. So if I needed to stop, get a quick sip of water, no big deal. But I don't want to stop in a conspicuous area right there. Okay, let's continue this glaze on the other side, and I'm going to make it a little more opaque. I'm going to add a bit more ultramarine blue and then some raw umber dark to that side. So it's at a ratio of, I would say, 60% ultramarine blue, 70% ultramarine blue to 30% raw umber dark. There was maybe a bit of Indian yellow in it, but it's mostly just those two colors. The Indian yellow was just because I was mixing into that other glaze, so you don't need to do that. But this is what we have. It's a gray with just a slightly bluish, greenish tint to it. We're going to continue this down. The reason I made it a little more opaque was because the glazes are darker on this side, and if we went with that same level of translucency as we had on the left side, it just wouldn't make much of an impact. And it just would provide more work unnecessarily. But if I use this more opaque glaze on that side, well, then you'd see the brushwork and it would get blotchy very quickly. So the rule of thumb is where the glazes, where your existing area that you're doing glazes on top of is already darker, then your glazes can afford to get a little more opaque and you won't see the brush strokes and it'll work just fine. So I'm going to just do some brush strokes in different directions, just smooth it out. And so I have some going this way and that. I actually am painting on top of her hair just a bit. You can see that as I just smooth this out right here, and it's going right on top of her hair. And that, what that does is it allows the color to be more evenly distributed into the image, provides for more color harmony. So we get some of these cool tones working into the hair, and that allows the hair to recede just a little bit behind her back. But I'll come back on top with semi-opaque highlights at the right time. Okay, so that'll work for now, and we can come back in and do some additional glazes on the background, but that darkened the whole thing a little bit. It's still a little greener than I'd like. I'd like to maybe tone down the color a bit if I'm trying to achieve what's in the reference photo. But then again, I might decide I like the green. It's not a bad color in and of itself. But anyway, I'm going to stop this video here and see you in the next video where we're going to do some more work on her face. So I'll see you there.